Welcome to Wizards of the Tower.
Role play.
This episode, we're going to be talking about house rules. And they're not just rules about playing your character, it's rules about playing in somebody's house. Welcome to Wizards of the Tower.
Role play.
We're going to talk a little bit about house rules. And it's not necessarily rules about playing certain characters or the game itself, but when playing in somebody's house. Now, there was a recent thing that came out, I think somebody on Reddit, a DM, that posted a bunch of house rules, and people were kind of making a lot of fun of it. But the guy made a lot of sense on what they were doing. Now, you know, we've got a little bit of tech here. So the reason we've got this is we've got our forum that we have that has our house rules that we post out there, and we ask people to read it before playing in our group and our house. And the reason is over the many years, since 2006, I think it was, 2007, that we started gaming always in our house when we ran a game, we had people that would do some of these things, and that's why we came up with some of these rules.
Yeah, it became necessary. We had a free-form game at first where basically, we would take any player and people were free to kind of act out and be themselves, and that's fine to a certain degree, to a certain extent. But we started running into issues with public decorum, where people starting to act out in public. The first time we started noticing is when we had people of a certain age using a lot of four-letter words at the table.
Yeah.
Very insulting language about quite a bit, about other people, but a lot of times about ladies and things like that. So we started to come up with these ideas. It's like, look, you have to behave decorously as possible in public as you would here in this game. And so Delaney and I sort of came up with these different sorts of house rules to kind of weed out people to a certain degree.
Right. Now you might think that maybe that's why we have problems keeping people or not getting people. But, these rules, none of them are really that over the top. And it's just, like Tom said, kind of public decorum. So one of the first ones we came up with was drinking alcohol.
Yeah.
And we don't mind people drinking alcohol. Once in a while, we've brought out a little mead or a little rum or a little beer, ale.
Yeah.
But we had people that were coming in that were just to the excess. They would come in, they were already pretty close to being drunk, and they would have these big, huge monster cans. I mean, the big monster cans of Foster's. And they would down a couple of those during a 6-hour game time.
Yeah.
Or 8-hour game time. Or they would come in with growlers, one of the big jugs of microbrew beer, and they would drink 2 of those. Yeah,
unfortunately, all the TV commercials and things you see aside, alcohol typically does, excessive alcohol use typically doesn't lead down a road to good feelings. It either gets people really drunk, they get really, really silly, or they start loud. Or they get really loud, or they start fighting.
Yeah.
So.
Or they lose attention.
Or they're basically getting groggy. So we had to limit that, and because this is our house, we didn't want our house to become, like a knockdown, drag-out party.
Right.
And the alcohol use had to be limited severely with people because, unfortunately, getting people to behave responsibly it just is very difficult.
Right, and we didn't want to have somebody driving home drunk and get into an accident because then we felt responsible. Even though they might have a designated driver, we just didn't want that, or they might get sick. You never know.
Yeah. So it can lead to a lot of issues, and we decided that if you could refrain from drinking heavily or even moderately during our game session, that would really be great. I'm sure most people, even if they drink a lot of alcohol, whether it's socially or privately, I'm pretty certain you could refrain from that, at least for a few hours while we game.
Right. The next one we had was non-game talk while you're gaming. You're sitting there gaming and somebody all of a sudden starts talking about the new Spider-Man movie or the new Hulk comic book or a movie or whatever. They get to, oh, by the way, did you know that, or...
Yeah.
And that takes away from playing in the game. So we always ask people to try and keep it to a minimum. Now, we all do it. Once in a while it's like, oh, I just forgot, I just remembered something. And then, let's try and keep that to when we take a break, when we have our meal break, or after the game, or before the game. Try and do all that talk, about your sports team, or your Spider-Man movie, or your Magic the Gathering game, or Warhammer game. Try and keep that as much out of the actual game time as possible.
Yeah, so we've recently had issues with this regarding crosstalk. I call it crosstalk. Basically, it's talk that doesn't engage with the game, but it's between characters, between players, rather. Yeah. And we had a character, or not a character, a player, who literally could not stop talking about another game system. Even though we were playing Pathfinder, they just could not stop talking about another game system. And it really got me annoyed because Delaney puts a lot of effort into creating a game scenario that we can play. And when someone is constantly bringing up a different game scenario, a different game system, different players, it really takes your mind off and your focus off what you should be doing.
Yeah.
And it got really, really annoying to me because I don't like to see Delaney's efforts wasted. And I don't like to see characters... I mean, we're there to game. Now, we're not there to socialize. If we were sitting around a patio deck and we were just yakking, that's different. But we're there to game. We're there to make progress in the game. And that's what crosstalk interferes with.
Yeah. Keep it, for when you're taking your breaks or when you're taking your meal break or before the game or after game.
Yeah.
So that way you're not disrupting your playtime.
Yep.
Next one. Be willing to break away from not always playing the same class. Well, I'm going to always play the fighter. It's all I'm going to ever play. I don't want to play anything else.
Well, if that's all you ever want to play, you should probably find a new game group. Because one of the things that we do in our game group is make people play other classes. You can't always play the fighter. You can't always play the rogue. You can't always play the monk. The reason we do this, and the reason why this is a very tight rule that we have, is because we don't end up with these non-variegated parties. We want parties to be as varied as possible. Cleric, rogue, fighter, ranger, wizard, somebody. We want to have a well-rounded party group, and it's necessary. It's absolutely necessary to play Pathfinder to have a well-rounded party group.
Yeah, we had one guy that always wanted to play monk, no matter what. Always wanted to play monk.
And the few times that he played other things, he got frustrated and he left and dropped out.
Yeah.
I was a little frustrated about that myself. And the thing is I don't see, I don't see the attraction of not playing other characters. How many can you play in Pathfinder? 20, 30, 50?
Well, okay, if you start from the bees.
Yeah.
Okay, and that from the core rulebook alone, you've got barbarian, you got bard, you got cleric, you got druid, you got fighter, you got ranger, you got a paladin, you got a wizard, you got a sorcerer, you got a rogue, you got the monk, and that's just the core rulebook. Mm-hmm. That's not counting any of the other books.
So the thing is I know this may sound really dictatorial and annoying to some people, and some people might say, well, I don't want to be in your game group. Sounds like you're trying to force something on me. It's like, yeah, I mean, in a way, we are trying to force you to have fun.
Yeah. And just learn, and expand. The game is not just always about playing a fighter.
Yeah.
I don't care if you always play a human. I don't care if you always play a halfling. I don't care if you always want to play a tiefling. Just play a different class once in a while.
Play different classes.
Expand.
Yeah.
Don't always be the same character over and over and over again. Annoying characters. Those are the guys that are afraid of monsters, but yet they never run away. There's another rule that we have in it that actually kind of dictates in that too. But annoying character that that's always doing things that are just so annoying to every player in the group, and they just continue to do it, even though they know that it's annoying people.
So there's that joke in Pathfinder, not Pathfinder, but D&D. It's like, don't you know you never split the party? So in the past, we've had people who are so annoying that they wanted to go off on themselves and do their own adventure. So Delaney, trying to accommodate somebody like that, would essentially say, "All right, you're going to go off in the mountains by yourself. Everyone else is going to explore the dungeon in the town. When you're in the mountains, trolls attack you and kill you. Roll up a new character."
I didn't do it quite that drastic.
That's how I would. So look, it's part of playing a party group. Okay, we had one that was like what, afraid of fire.
Yeah, there was a guy that was afraid of fire.
In a medieval world, you're afraid of
torches.
fire.
That included torches.
Torches, candles, campfires. What? I want to play a dolphin. Look, okay.
That
Within,
would be an annoying character.
yeah, within reason, there's a lot of variation. And I think people should look at that and say, well, can I play someone with some eccentricities? Okay, maybe, sure, depending on the eccentricity.
So here's a great one. In the game of Dragonbane, there is a character race that are ducks. And I've heard this time and time and time again, that people say, if I hear one more person talking like Donald Duck while playing a duck character, they're going to strangle him. Because how annoying would that be, having somebody all the time? That would get pretty annoying.
It would. I don't know why anybody would ever want to play a duck character. I suppose just to try it out, to see what it was like to have like a duck paladin or something like that. Okay. You want to work it. It's between you, the DM, and the other people in the group. But if I was in the group and we had a duck paladin and the guy was talking like Donald Duck, I'd probably be like, look, I know you want to role play, but stop it. That is annoying. It's really annoying.
I could come up with a better, why talk like Donald Duck? Why don't you talk like Reginald Duckling?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, he's got a very proper English accent.
you could do something. So,
But yeah, that's kind of what we mean by annoying.
yeah.
Power gaming. Now, there are a lot of people that like the power game. I don't like power gamers in my group because power gamers a lot of times take control over everything. They are there to break the game. I know of people in the game of Pirate Borg that do everything they can to try and power game just to break the game. That's their only purpose, is to break the game. Once in a while it's fun to power game, but not all the time.
There is a natural progression when you play a long time that your character is going to get powerful. Okay, I don't really consider that power gaming. We also call it metagaming.
Metagaming, which is another one we have in there. But metagaming, in the Pirate Borg game, there was a vampire, and it was like, oh, let's do this, and this. And I'm like, have you ever ran into a vampire before in this game?
It was hard because we had to figure out what to do. And we had to play our characters as if they had never seen a vampire.
Yeah, and everyone was like, well, let's do this, and this. And I'm like, no, you've never ran into a vampire before.
Yeah, so that was difficult. It's kind of like we had to figure out what we wanted to do in that. To Delaney's credit, she kept us on storyline, and to the rest of the players' credit, we did manage to figure out what to do about light and dark. So it did work. But power gaming, we've had bad experiences with that in the past. We really have. When we first started, we were in a group where the guy who had like 20 sentient swords in his backpack. And he had a whole...
I can do 120 points of damage in one strike with this one sword, and my other swords can dance, and they can do attack each. But, oh, wait, you're casting a fireball that will individually target characters 10 feet, it's a 10-foot fireball per person.
He had a whole Greek chorus of swords back there telling him what to do and everything like that. And I mean, I was a level 4 or 5 cleric. I had a healing spell.
I think we're higher now. I think we're like 7 or 8.
Yeah, I felt like a 4 or 5 though in that group. And the guy could skate in, slice up a bone dragon and skate back out all in one roll. And right then I started to see that there was going to be some pretty serious issues here in this game, because essentially they were dominating the narrative of the game. Now, the one time in that gaming group, I actually managed to come up with a very elaborate backstory regarding a character I'd created. And we put it out there, and it was about basically a dragon priest who was just kind of a lower level dragon priest, had a very elaborate backstory. The one time we tried to play that, the person who was playing the 25 sentient sword guys just threw an enormous fit that we were even going to include this sort of dragony priesty, clericy guy into our gaming group. And that's when we stopped playing.
Yeah.
Because we were like, this guy dominates the group. It's all ego. And I tend to think that power gaming is either ego or it's a way to make up for a lack of something else. You know? So I'm not a fan of it. And when we spot somebody trying to manipulate the rules in a certain way, Delaney usually tries to shut them down by throwing an undead bone dragon that lands on top of them at night and then eats them. So then we get rid of their character
Tom's
pretty quick.
exaggerating there. I don't do that. The
No,
next-
3 trolls or something like, or 3 owlbears. Remember that one?
Or 2 owlbears.
Okay, 2 owlbears. Well, that's one way to get rid of the guy who likes to like wrestle people.
That was his choice, not mine.
Okay.
The next one we have is don't wear your dirty shoes into the house.
Oh
we
my
always,
God.
We kind of take a European idea of you take your shoes off when you walk into somebody's house. In fact, when we go to people's houses, we ask, hey, do you want us to take off our shoes? Yes? No. Take off your shoes. You know, that way they're not trying to clean up the dust, the dirt and the mud and the horse shit. Yeah, I said it, horse shit.
Oh,
We've
yeah.
had people walk in with their cowboy boots
Oh, yeah.
full of, mud and horse shit, and it just tracks everyone. We're like, where did this come from? Why is all this mud and crud and clods underneath our table?
Yeah.
You know? And especially when it's in a carpet.
So what really started this thing is one of the characters we had, or one of the players we had, lived in like downtown in a town, nearby, and there were like old streets and old muddy alleys, and he was wearing Doc Marten shoes. Well, Doc Marten shoes have those stars and bars grippers on the bottom, a lot of them. Okay. So he would pick up clods of mud, and I would look under his chair when he was there kicking his feet around, and there'd be a pile of dried mud under his chair. And I confronted him about it. I said, what are you doing tracking all that mud in? He's like, oh, it's not me. I mean, it's blatantly him. I mean, I don't know who the hell else it's going to be, right? But this is the kind of guy who just, oh, that's not me. It's somebody, it's the guy, the ghost in the corner or whatever. We got to the point where we couldn't stand it because people were just so slovenly. And we're like, look, take your shoes off, man. We don't want, our carpets are not in good shape, but we don't want them covered in your filth.
Yeah.
Really, I don't like cleaning up after other people. I don't. That's just how it is. I just don't. I do that at work. I don't like it. So I don't like cleaning up after gamers. I find I still have to do it.
Yeah, which leads us into the other rule: is pick up after yourself.
Oh
pick
my
up,
God!
Pick up your
Cheetos.
Well, not just your Cheetos, your aluminum cans of your Monster drink that you drank, or your bottle of whatever.
Yeah.
Your crumbs. Pick up after yourself. Your scraps of paper that you've wrote.
Yeah.
Because that's more stuff for us to pick up, and if we got food laying around, then that's for the mice and the cockroaches and the ants to try and come in. We don't have a problem with that in our house, but or at least with rodents and other things.
Yeah, I mean,
but we try to keep it clean. And
you should be respectful of another person's house. I was taught that since I was the youngest kid in the world. I mean, when my mom and my father both told me, be respectful of other people's property, be respectful of other people's presence and their houses. Don't track mud in. Don't be destructive. Be quiet. Pay attention. What's going on? Be that person who is a good guest.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, these days, because people don't act like good guests, they act like barbarian hordes. You really got to weed people out who don't want to be that kind of person who's going to be respectful in your house.
Yeah, and that would go for when we have our meal. You pick up your plate and your silverware. Yeah. And bring them to the sink so we can clean them off. We'll clean up that stuff, but at least bring them to the sink so we can get them cleaned up.
Yeah.
It's kind of like when you go to Grandma's house for Thanksgiving. You don't expect Grandma to pick up all the Thanksgiving dishes.
Most people do. They expect Granny to do everything, and they just go and sit there and fall asleep in front of the football game, and Granny's got to clean up. I'm sure she appreciates that from everybody. After working her whole life, now she's got to work more because the slobs over there in the other room don't want to pick up. Yay. Yeah.
Another one we have, concerning our meal is bring food to share for the meal. In the past, we used to do it where we bought all the food, and then we'd say, everybody, here's how much it costs, everybody chip in that much, and we'd have people that come in, they would just load their plate clear full of food, eat 5 or 6 bites of it, throw the rest of it away, and then not chip in any money at all.
And then not pay for anything. Or they would show up with like some crappy-ass homemade cookies and expect that to be payment. No, I mean, we had to stop doing that because people were not respectful again. Or where they're like, well, I don't have much money. Really? You don't have $5?
Yeah.
Come on. You know, what are you, destitute?
We're making
living
tacos.
in a
Can't you
box?
pick up a thing of tortillas?
Yeah.
A bag of cheese?
Yeah. Come on.
You know, we don't have that problem anymore because a lot of times now what we do is I make a menu and I say this is what we need, and we always supply usually the most expensive part of it.
Yeah.
And then I say, okay, here's what you know bring, and people will bring what I ask them to.
Mm-hmm.
We've got one person who doesn't really do that, but and then they're picky. But
I mean, it's all right.
yeah. So the next one is, I always prep the meal. You know, I always cook the meal, and there's a lot to do sometimes.
Yeah.
And once in a while, it's nice to have somebody say, "Hey, can I chop the veggies for you?" Or
Yeah.
can I get this out for you? And I'm like, absolutely, you know, or can I make this for you? Or, you know, stir the gravy while I'm doing another thing. That's always a great thing.
Delaney is not anybody's kitchen slave, all right? She's not. She is a wonderful cook, does a great job of cooking, but when you're prepping for 5 or 6 people, it's really nice to have someone come in there, wash their hands, grab a knife, and say, hey, can I chop these tomatoes for you?
Yeah.
You know, can I cut up this meat? Can I season this for you? Can I help you in any way? That's nice. That is being polite, and that's being a good guest. You know, in the past, we've had people just show up, plop their fat asses in a chair, and sit there and wait to be fed like a bunch of puppies, you know? And it gets old really quick, I gotta tell you.
Yeah. You know, because having help, you know, makes it nice. You know, if like Tom, if he's doing the burgers and he's got to run in the house real quick, well, you know, if somebody can watch the burgers so they don't turn into hockey pucks.
Yeah, you know? I mean, it's nice to have someone, you know, to help out one way or the other. Even
just to offer.
Yeah, just to offer. And sometimes you know, it's even to offer, and sometimes you don't really need them to help. But it's nice that a person offers. You know, we live in the kind of society where people they order out most of the time. You know, they don't even get out of their houses. People are shut-ins. They don't even, you know, cook for themselves or whatever. And so I can see where a lot of people don't feel comfortable like trying to help cook. But you could help do something. You know, whether it's grab the drinks or get ice for the cups, whatever.
Or set the table. Or...
Yeah, something like that. Because it's part of a community. It's part of a communal meal.
Yeah.
And I don't know why people can't contribute. It's really strange.
Yeah. Don't nag. Can I have that? Can I have that carpet of flying? Can I have that carpet of flying? Can I have that carpet of flying? Hey, I want a carpet of flying. Can I have a carpet of flying?
It started
Can
out
I have
as
a carpet of flying?
It started out as a joke, but it got really sickening after a while.
Every game.
Yeah.
Multiple times a game.
Yeah.
I don't know how long.
Yeah. No, you are not going to get that wand of many things. I'm sorry. I don't care what you do. You're not going to get it because we don't have it in this world, right? You can't be an underwater monk because you're in the desert, right?
Yep.
So some players expect, and this kind of comes out of metagaming, I think. Some players expect that if they nag a DM long enough, they'll get that special magic item they've always been wanting.
Yeah.
And all that really does is make a DM and the other players really annoyed. We've had people like that before, and we've been really. Delaney's had to get kind of short with them and just tell them, no, you're not getting it.
Yeah.
This is not that kind of world. You are not getting an adamantine armor set. We don't have it in this world, no matter what.
Yeah.
Some people can't accept that. So quit nagging the DM for some impossible item.
Does your character even know about it? Just because you know about it doesn't mean your character knows about it.
Yeah. Well, okay. So one of the things that's always got me, and this is kind of off a little bit, but not every village has a magic shop that sells 10,000 different kind of wands. Okay. Some villages are simply just villages, and they're just people there trying to make a living.
They've got maybe a place for everyone to gather and a place to buy food, and maybe a grain mill, and maybe a smith to help keep the farm implements going.
Yeah,
and
maybe there's a smith, and they're like, oh, can I get the smith to make me a sword? Yeah, in a month. Come back in a month and he might have something that looks like a sword, but this is the guy who makes horseshoes. So, I mean, don't expect much from him.
Yeah.
Well, why not? Is he a dwarf? It's like, I don't care if he's a dwarf. I don't care if he's a gnome. I don't care if he's a giant. Okay? This village doesn't have adamantine swords. For some people, they just can't get that.
Yeah.
It's just, and that nagging is really hard to deal with.
Yeah. Arguing with the DM. So nothing more annoying than arguing with the DM. Now, there's one thing about questioning a DM to say, wait, how does this work? Or, wait a minute, you said this before, now you're doing this. Which way is it? But when the DM says no and you keep arguing, or the DM says, this is how I want the rule, and you say, I don't want that rule, well, that gets annoying.
Yeah.
When you continue to argue with the DM. We had a player that came in, he would wear a t-shirt when he DM'd that says no arguing with the DM. But the minute that he was a player, he would argue with the DM.
Yeah.
He would argue with me.
Yeah.
And I finally one day said, can you stop arguing with me? You know, I don't do it in your game. I'll question things that you might throw out because I want to have some clarification. But don't argue with me. And he's like, no, I can't do that.
Yeah, the problem was, is he always thought that, again, if you argue long enough, you can get what you want. And that really isn't always the case, but some people believe it is. And they want to contest every single rule. Well, I don't think we should do that. I mean, this doesn't seem right. That horse would run faster than that. And you're like, look, in Pathfinder rules, the horse runs this fast right here. It says right here on page 44. Well, I don't agree with that. Well, I'm sorry if you don't agree with it. Maybe you could write a letter to the people who wrote the rule book, and maybe they can, do something with you, blah, 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 blah. Whatever. It's not your time and place to argue with the DM. Now, in the past, DMs have made snap judgments on stuff, because just to keep the game going. And the DM does have the authority to do that. They can make a snap judgment and say, well, it's like, okay, in this case, when you rented that horse, it was a real nag. I mean, that thing could barely pick its feet up. So yeah, you're not going that fast. You're going a lot slower. So, or something like that. Or this is difficult terrain. So the DM can make a judgment like that. Right. But quit your arguing, man. Really, if the DM says no, no means no. That's it.
Yeah. Another one which we have is communication. Communicate with the group. Let us know that you're not going to be there, because when we have a meal and we prep that meal or plan on prepping a meal, and you message somebody, call them 30 minutes, text message somebody 30 minutes before a game, says, hey, my friend's in town, I'm not going to make it. Well, now that's that takes away from planning, that takes away from the meal. The thing that you were going to bring, now somebody else has to bring.
Yeah.
Or we have to supply it if we have it.
Yeah.
Or we just don't have it.
The idea that for some reason people don't reply to messages about the game, especially like coming up on game day. It's one thing if it's a week away and they don't say much. But the thing is that if it's on game day and you send out an email saying, I need everybody to create an alternate character real quick, first level, second level, whatever, just in case something happens. And then everybody shows up and no one's got the character. And they're like, well, I didn't get the message. It's like, look, I know you're on your computers all the time. You're trying to tell me you didn't get that email. You got it, you just ignored it. And we've had problems with people in the past doing that. They just ignore the emails. They don't want to do anything. And we've had to let people go out of our game group.
We had a guy that lived an hour and a half away, and he would text message as he was driving down saying, hey, what do I need to bring? And it's like, the email said everything that needed to be brought.
Yeah.
So that's kind of annoying, and so just, communicate. We all have to do it in our jobs and in life, Communicate. It's not that hard.
I guess I see someone who sort of plays that kind of weird game as someone who just really doesn't want to actually game in a group.
Yeah.
That sort of non-communicative thing is sort of like a childish sort of behavior, like I'm going to go in the corner and sulk or whatever, or I'm going to play hard to get, so I'm going to make them reach out to me 3 or 4 times so I can feel justified or something like that. Look, be prompt. Return messages. Return questions and answers.
Yeah.
It's the polite thing to do, and especially when you're in a gaming group, which is a social group. Be social. Yeah. Be social about that.
Let everyone know as soon as possible, because there's nothing more annoying than you wake up puking your guts out in an hour before the game. You say, I'm not going to make it. Well, come on, you woke up in the morning and you were sick.
Yeah.
We don't play until 2 o'clock. Did you sleep until 2 o'clock?
Plan ahead. Yeah. In the past, we've had problems where we've loaded everything up in our car. We were on our way over to the game house where we were going to game.
Yeah, 20 minutes away.
20 minutes away, and we got a text 10 minutes away. oh, we're leaving, we're going up to watch a hockey game. Sorry, guys. Maybe next time.
And it was at the host's house.
Yeah, and we were like, what?
And we were bringing food and
Everything, and that really burned us bad.
Yeah.
And we never gamed with those folks anymore.
yeah. Politics and religion. Keep it out of the game and out of the house, because you got people who are one side and one that's the other side, and one guy that like to argue, like to bring up politics, and that was the other thing that kind of ended that when we say, please don't.
Yeah.
We might agree with you, but there may be other people that you're insulting or you're going to cause an argument, because we've had arguments between two people who were totally opposite. I mean, one this side to the left and this side to the right.
Yeah.
And while they gamed well together, or they gamed okay together, it would get pretty contentious, and people were like,
Yeah, keep the actual personal stuff out of it. My dad always said that there's three things that break people up: money, politics, and religion. If you keep them out of the conversation, you can be friends with just about anybody.
Yeah.
Who may not agree with you. I'm not saying be friends with an evil person. I'm saying be friends with just about anybody you might meet, as long as you keep those three things out of there. All right? Everything's really cool until you start talking about like who owes who money, or what their politics are, or somebody's religious beliefs, because that stuff, it gets hot real fast.
Yeah.
And so we've had a hard and fast rule now for several years to keep that out of the house. Whether you're a conservative, whether you're a moderate, whether you're liberal, whether you're in between, whether you're just your own person, libertarian, whatever, that's great. I mean, we believe that you should be allowed to have your own beliefs. But the thing is there's a time and a place for that, and our game group is not that time or that place.
Yeah. Make your own PC. We had a person that came in. They were a girlfriend, a former girlfriend, one of the players. Didn't make her character. Didn't know anything about playing that character.
Oh, that's right. So essentially, this brings up another thing, and I don't know if you've got that farther down on the list. That's spouses who show up just to keep an eye on their spouse player. Okay, they're not there to game. They're there to make sure that their spouse either behaves a certain way or doesn't have fun without them. Okay?
Or isn't cheating on them.
Or isn't cheating on them, or isn't doing something weird. So they just show up, and they're not paying attention to the game.
They're not invested into the game.
They're not invested. They're not making characters. They're not playing. They're just keeping an eye on their spouse.
They don't want to play, really.
Yeah, they're just keeping an eye on their spouse. Okay? The reason they're doing that is because they don't trust their spouse. There's been trouble in the past, or there's been some kind of situation, and essentially they just sit there and kind of stare at everybody, eyeballing you. It's like, which one of you is going to try to steal my husband or wife from me? That kind of stuff. It makes it very uncomfortable, because it's like having a squatter in your house for some reason who doesn't do anything but just sit there and stare at you. And why are they there?
Yeah.
And husbands and wives, we've had husbands and wives act like that.
Yeah.
And it really...
We had a really, really, really good player, and her husband wasn't really invested in the game, and he quit because he really didn't want to game.
Yeah.
And then 2 games later, she was out because he didn't want her to game anymore, because, they weren't together, and he wasn't being able to have fun, and and she was bummed about it.
We had a player who played with us 3 or 4 times, and then all of a sudden her husband showed up because he was really concerned that she was having fun. He was the guy that coughed the whole time during the game. You remember that? He had that dry hack, and he sat there and he went during the whole game. He never played, and he had a character, but as far as I could tell, he didn't seem to play it at all. And we were just like, what is going on, man? And they never showed back up. And that was bad, because she was a great, fun player. So, folks, really, be mature.
Yeah. Be there for you.
Be there for you. That's what it is like to, believe it or not, that's what it's like to be a mature adult. You have your own fun. You have your own adventures. You do your stuff, okay? That doesn't mean you're not with your partner. That doesn't mean you're not emotionally invested in your partner. But everything that you do, okay, has your own personal stamp to it, okay? I do leatherworking. Delaney does not do leatherworking. Delaney paints mechs. I don't paint mechs. But we still work together on stuff. But that doesn't mean that because Delaney paints mechs, I'm going to be like bugging her all the time about painting mechs, and I'm going to try to like, screw everything up just because I want to be part of it. It's like you're trying to type something on your keyboard and your stupid cat keeps jumping up, walking over your keyboard. They just want to be there. They want to be the center of attention. I'm sorry. That stuff doesn't really work.
Yeah.
Be a mature adult.
Yeah. Contribute to the game. Don't be the controller of it. Contribute to it.
We've had people just sat there like bumps on logs.
Yeah.
Truly. And we've kicked them out.
Playing is all part of the fun, and contribute, but don't just sit there and draw stick figure pictures.
We've had a lot of that.
Communicate.
Yeah.
Pay attention to the game. You're writing in the journal, or maybe you're drawing a picture, but when you're doing these, it's active listening. So that way you can pipe up and say, okay, here's what I'm doing.
That's a common thing. People are on their phones. People are drawing little anime figures. They're on their laptops. They're surfing the net. Whatever they're doing, they're not paying attention to the game. Now, DMs put a lot of time and effort into putting games up, into creating games, creating characters, creating scenarios. It's insulting when you do something like that and you're not paying attention. The problem is, this little thing right here has wrecked more game groups because everybody's sitting there doing this, and you're like, Jim, what are you going to do? The monster's coming at you. Jim, what are you going to do? Oh, okay, yeah, the monster. All right, yeah, where are we? And you're like, gee, I want to strangle this guy. It's just rude. It's really, really, really rude to be like that.
Yeah.
To be non-engaged.
Yeah. So contribute something. Not asking you to have an accent, but just kind of be there, be present, be accounted for.
Not everybody is the best role player, but you don't have to role play, but be invested and engaged in your character and in the scenario.
Yeah. Gamer funk. We all know that term. You go to some game store and you just walk in and it just about knocks you over from somebody who doesn't bathe or use deodorant, or maybe they just don't have good hygiene.
Some people, okay, now I understand. So I work in the pharmaceutical production industry. Some people have body flora that is really ripe, and it's very difficult for them to do stuff like work in controlled environments when you have very ripe body flora. And you can smell people like that. They usually smell really, really, really ripe. My thing is this, okay? There's people who can't help it, but there's also people who just basically don't change their underwear for a week because they're lazy. All right? And they expect to show up, and they're like, I just got up. I'm here to game, and you're like, holy crap, man.
Nobody wants to sit next to the stinky person.
Yeah, what is it with the kind of personality that creates the whole concept of gamer funk? Does anybody ever say like firefighter funk or crossing guard?
Cowboy funk.
Crossing guard funk.
Police officer funk.
Bank teller funk.
Football players funk.
Yeah, well, I mean athletes, but athletes I've noticed clean themselves up pretty good typically.
You take a shower.
Yeah. So why is it just gamer funk? Is it like the personality of people who are so obsessed with gaming that they don't pay any attention to their personal hygiene? Yeah. Maybe. But there's other people who are really obsessed with other stuff and they still pay attention to the personal hygiene.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's the world can go to hell attitude that a lot of people have, or they just don't care, or they're just shut-ins, or they have mental issues, whatever. But again, it's like Delaney and I were talking about. When it comes to having, being social and being respectful of other people's positions, other people's places, other people's homes, clean up. Really clean up. And have we ever kicked anybody out for Gamer Funk?
Not that I think of.
I can't remember. We did have some smelly folks. We had a guy who was really sweaty.
We had a guy that he would pass gas.
Yeah.
He would eat food, and man, would he pass gas.
Yeah.
It was bad.
It was bad. I mean, it was, and he didn't even try to be polite. Like, I'm going to go to the bathroom real quick. He'd just sit there and he'd raise a cheek and honk a big old train whistle out.
What was funny is usually at the end of the game they would go to use the bathroom, and then Tom would use it afterwards, and he would come out gagging.
Yeah. I mean, it was bad. We had to. I always knew right before he was going to go home, he'd go up there and spend about 20 minutes in the bathroom, and then I was like, all right, I got to rub some, fix under my nose before I go in there, before I hose down the toilet and the sink with concentrated Lysol. Yeah, I mean, some people, I don't know what to tell you, really. Just be polite with others. Just keep in mind that be respectful of other people's, their place, other people's homes and things like that.
So we're going to do one more, and then we're going to end this one, but we're going to come back with a part 2 of this episode.
Yeah.
And the next one we have is, we have a set rule that we have a typical 7-game trial period with anybody. That's not just for us, that's for them. Because we may not be the proper fit for the person coming in, and they may not be the proper fit for us. They just, the one person who was the ex-girlfriend who didn't have her own PC, who didn't role play or didn't know the character at all, we just told the guy, he said, this isn't going to work. She's just not invested. She's not here. For the game.
I remember that.
And or we've had the guy that was coming down from, a mile or an hour and a half away, and he did that multiple times, and we finally just said, look, we just can't have this. So he had actually been with us more than 7 games, but most people we give a 7-game trial, and really, if in 7 games you don't like us, you can leave. No questions asked. And if in 7 games we don't like where you're at, we may ask you to leave.
Look, folks, I know this sounds.
This is a trial period.
This sounds really draconian, right? It sounds like we're a bunch of elitists. We're not. We accept a lot of people into our group.
Yeah.
And we bend over backwards to make sure they have a good time and to make sure they have fun.
They have a good meal.
They have a good meal, that they have good social interaction. We really try hard to help people out. We really do. But there are just some people whose personalities just absolutely will not mesh in a group. And you can tell.
Yeah.
They just will not mesh.
They show up every game and they just reek, and they don't want to.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, but I don't want to sit next to that person.
Yeah.
I don't want to be across the table from that person.
Yeah.
Where if I can smell you that bad on the end of an 8-foot plus table, I don't want to get next to you.
Yeah. We've had people who I think their social interaction skills were so stunted for some reason, either, ADHD, some other behavioral issue, to where they just could not function in a social group. Either wouldn't talk, or would burst out with weird outbursts, not interact, not pay attention, something. And we've been so lenient with people. We've kept people in our group for 15, 20 game sessions. Finally, we're like, man, we've had enough with this guy. He never shows.
Usually it's not just Tom and I that make that decision, unless it's somebody who's really breaking house rules. Usually we'll ask, those people who have been in the group for a while, like, what do you think?
Yeah. Yeah. We're always like, we've had it with this guy. We've had it with this person. They never show up with their character created on time. They show up late to the game.
They forget their character sheet.
They forget their character sheet. They show up late to the game, like hour late every time. And it's like, this is just getting terrible. And we've booted people for that, and for good cause.
Yeah. So anyway, we're going to end part 1 of House Rules. We will do another episode in the future. So anyway, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, spread the word, ring the bell. That gives you notifications. Join us on Discord. If you have an idea for an episode you want us to do, send us an email.
Yeah.
It's at wizardsofthetowerrp@comcast.net. It's right there at the bottom of our page. So, please don't be afraid to reach out. I don't check that email very often, but, I will reply to it as soon as I do see it.
Yeah.
I promise on that. Just like we make sure that we reply to every comment, even if it's just a, hey, thanks for replying, on our page. So, anyway, may all your adventures be epic.
And keep on rolling.
Thanks, folks.